Hi everyone, this is Emily Leiphart from Art from the Heart. Welcome to our third video for the Too Many Cards video series. Neat and Tangled is our generous sponsor today, and we're excited to be playing with Ride With Me. This adorable set was illustrated by Elena Rozakis, and I had to have it because of the tandem bike. As most of you know, my husband is a bike designer, so this set will definitely come in handy for creating cards for different occasions. I didn't even know that the die cut the animals' legs perfectly for sitting on the seats. It's just so perfect. I do hope Elena will design an accompanying set with other types of animals, maybe a boy and a girl, plus more accessories. As you can see, the set includes 2 main riders, as well as 2 smaller animals that fit in the basket. There's a little wagon with a string attachment that you can put the present and moving boxes in. You could definitely sit both the hedgehog and the bunny in there together. There's also a pram for announcing a pregnancy or new baby. I've gone ahead and stamped a bunch of the images using my Mini Misty stamping tool. I forgot to clean off the bear before moving it to stamp again, and it had already partially second generation stamped onto the cardstock before I inked it up, so that's why it's crossed off. That reminds me not to color it because it's imperfect and it would be a waste of time. I've done that in the past, so that's why I crossed it off. It's not terribly blurred, but I prefer not to use it. My family is obsessed with the We Bare Bears cartoon. It's about a trio of bears who are best friends. They were orphaned as cubs but found each other. There's a polar bear, a grizzly bear, and a panda, so I wanted to feature all 3 types of bears on my card. In order to customize the bear into a panda, I had to create a mask for the snout and crop it out. Since that was going to be me as the panda, I didn't want the line there even though a panda does have a snout. I just wanted it to look more feminine and different from the other 2 bears. I stamped the entire bear image on a piece of masking paper. Then I cut out the nose and mouth so I would have something to hold on to before cutting out the snout. If I cut out the snout line first and then the nose and mouth, I'd only have the tiny piece of snout to hold on to. I know that sounds really funny, but it's true. So when I place the mask with all 3 pieces, I line up the stamp and remove the outermost and innermost pieces, leaving only the snout line. When I stamp the bear, it gives me a bear without the snout. Now I can color. I used W0, W1, and W2 to shade the polar bear. I also added rosy cheeks using E00 and E01. I colored the grizzly bear with E34, E33, and E35. I also used E31 on his chest and snout. I added cheeks with E01, and I used the colorless blender to blend the browns together, so the bear ended up looking lighter than I wanted. Next time I color him with these colors, I wouldn't use the colorless blender. To create the details on the panda, I'm using N5, N7, and N9. I'm very careful around the eyes, and I tried not to use too much ink around the eyes. I did have to use the colorless blender to wet color away from the pupils, otherwise the panda would have looked a little creepy. The colorless blender resulted in blurred, fuzzy lines around the eye patches, but it makes the panda look soft, so I was okay with that. I'm going to have to experiment a little more with the panda look on this bear stamp. A teeny bit of the ink got past the snout mask, so there's a tiny line on the panda's face. I could have left it, but I decided to use my white gel pen to cover up that line. I'm going to stamp the tiny little bow for the panda's head to make it obvious that she's a girl. I'm coloring the hedgehog with the same shades I used on the polar bear and the grizzly bear. The most time was spent on coloring the bike, since I had to be very precise on the frame and tires. I'm speeding up this section 20 times, or this video would be over 2 hours long. I couldn't decide if I should color the baskets at all or even what color they should be, so I decided to leave them until the end. I didn't want to make them wicker baskets in case there was too much brown between the grizzly bear and the hedgehog. Depending on what other colors I use, I also didn't want it to clash. Now it's time to die cut all of the colored images and create a scene. I just love how the bike die cuts the negative space between the frame. At this point I'm about to die cut the panda, but realized that I didn't shade her legs, so I'm going to do that now using the same colors I used to shade the polar bear, which is W0, W1, and W2. At first I kept putting the wrong leg in the forefront, which looks pretty funny, but some people do sit on their bikes like that, especially if they're wearing a skirt or if they're just casually sitting and going a short distance. I don't know why I kept doing them, but it was definitely entertaining. I tried so many different combinations of bears on the bikes, swapping their order and trying one bike in front of the other to see if one combination looked better in the final scene. It was a tough decision. I finally decided it was time to adhere the bears and hedgehogs to the bikes to make it easier to move things around. Now I decide to keep the baskets neutral and color them gray. I've cut an A2 card base that opens on the short edge. I prefer my horizontal cards opening on the right rather than at the bottom because then they don't fall over when the fold gets weak over time. I also have a panel cut at 1/2 an inch smaller than the card base. This panel will have a lot of color sponged on it to create the background for my scene. Once I determined the spacing, I used a pencil to mark the 2 sections of road where the 2 bikes would be riding. I place a piece of masking paper over the first section so I can sponge it. I usually sponge in from the right side, but there are 2 sections, so I got a bit confused about the direction of the paper and where I wanted the darkest part of the ink to lie. I'm going to use a pencil to roughly draw in where the rays will change color. I'm counting the colors of the rainbow and decide to skip indigo and leave it at 6 colors total. Having an even number made it easy to divide up the sections, and you'll have to excuse my frizzy hair as I lean in. I'm going to speed through the sponging process since there are 6 sections and 12 colors. I picked 2 colors for each shade of the rainbow since it's hard for me to control the depth of the color when sponging. I wanted to be sure that it would fade to pale at one end and have a rich concentration of color at the origin. I think the color on the masking paper from the red and orange rays contaminated my yellow and green rays. The orange and yellow rays don't look that different, and the green is a bit muddy, so I started using the other edge of the masking paper when I realized what was happening. I used the wrong shade of purple to start. It was much darker than I recall, and I was unsure, so I should have tested it first, but it worked out in the end since I was able to add the balloon and color that in the same shades to bookend the scene. My original intention was to have the bikes coming off the left edge of the card, and I would cut off part of the wheel on the second bike. However, after I centered the images, I liked that better. While I was trying to place the sentiment on the Misty, I felt there was something missing on the left side in that white space, and that's when I realized a balloon tied to the fender would be the perfect addition. As I'm trying to position the balloon, I realized that I need to attach the 2 bikes together. I plan to stamp the balloon straight on the background and again on the fender so it lines up perfectly without the need for a die-cut balloon. After I stamp the balloon directly on the panel, I place a piece of acetate over top so it doesn't double stamp when I stamp it again on the bike fender. As with all new stamps, I rub it on my palm to remove any manufacturing residue. This allows the ink to adhere for a crisp, clean impression. The sentiment will be stamped in 2 colors, and I'm masking off the plain text to stamp the scripted life word in green to match the seats and rainbow. Then I stamp the rest of the sentiment in black. Now it's time to assemble the card. I adhere the panel to the card base with a tape runner and then pop up the bikes with foam tape. Now my card is done. We're giving away one $25 gift certificate to the Neat and Tangled store. One lucky winner will be chosen from this video on my YouTube channel or Kaylin's video for today. You must be a subscriber to both our channels. Be sure to leave some love for both of us to increase your chances of winning. Comments will close at 11:59 p.m. Eastern on May 21st. The winner will be announced on both our blogs and YouTube channels on May 23rd. Please head over to Kaylin's blog and YouTube channel using the link below to see her take on Ride With Me. Supply links are below if you're interested in any of the products I used in this video. You can also visit my blog for stills and more information about my cards. Thanks so much for watching!